At 6:03 a.m., I was scraping burnt oatmeal out of my office microwave with a plastic fork when I got the call that would set everything in motion. The buyer's lawyer wants updated escrow access logs by EOD. I didn't panic. I wiped my hands on the inside of my blazer sleeve because I'm classy like that, and told them I'd have it sent before lunch. No secretary, no assistant, no sycophantic intern who majored in LinkedIn humble brags. Just me, Carol with the oatmeal fork, making sure a $138 million merger didn't end up on a BuzzFeed list titled Top 10 Corporate Faceplints. That was my life at Shoremount Systems. 11 years deep, no scandals, no flaming inboxes, no post-it kingdoms on the wall pretending to be workflows. I ran escrow, compliance, and documentation like a woman whose houseplints live longer than most marriages. Nothing fancy. Just airtight. I wasn't loud about it, I didn't need to be. When a department head forgot to renew a license, I'd already submitted the backup. When a VP sent an NDA to the wrong vendor, I'd quietly corrected it and refiled with the timestamp adjusted so nobody looked like a clown. But I wasn't naive. I knew I was invisible by design. My kind of work, the bone-deep stuff that holds a company together, is the first to be overlooked and the last to be replaced. I reward a quiet paycheck and a front-row seat to whatever ego parade strutted into upper management next. And speaking of struts, Sierra showed up wearing heels so sharp they probably doubled as letter openers. New president, MBA from somewhere that hands them out like coupons. Walked in on day one with a vision board and a cameraman for her LinkedIn promo. Her energy? I just discovered synergy and now I'm addicted. She scanned the office like she was looking for ghosts to exercise. Her eyes hit me and paused, not in admiration, like she was trying to guess how many birthdays I had left in me before retirement. Hi, Carol, she said, over-enunciated like I was a contestant on a spelling bee. What would you say your visibility is right now, organizationally speaking? I blinked. I signed the escrow authorization forms and finalized compliance on all merger docs. Ah, she said like I just told her I bake banana bread for morale. We'll definitely circle back. Look, if you've made it this far, do me a tiny favor. Hit that little subscribe button and like this story. You wouldn't believe how many people listen without supporting, and honestly, it helps the team out more than you know. Plus, I promise it only gets juicier from here. Back to Sierra, 2 weeks in. She's scheduling visibility audits and talking about flattening silos, whatever the hell that meant. She didn't notice that while she was babbling about empathy-centered decision matrices, I was rewriting the escrow terms in plain language so the buyer's legal team didn't have to pretend they understood our back-end systems. Everyone else fawned. The VPs turned into teenage boys meeting a substitute teacher with a nose ring. Her assistant called her Sierra the shark like it was endearing and not a lawsuit waiting to happen. Meanwhile, I sat in my corner office, yes, a corner, but don't get too excited. It overlooked the dumpster and coordinated 2 banks, 3 law firms, and an M and a consultant who couldn't spell confidentiality if you spotted him half the letters. I wasn't flashy, but I was exact, precise, predictable in the best way, the kind of woman who labels her chargers and never loses a document, even when the server crashes and IT runs out of excuses. My satisfaction came quietly. A well-balanced ledger, a clean sign-off, a merger packet so tight you could bounce a quarter off it. The irony, of course, was that the tighter I ran things, the more replaceable I looked. And Sierra, she was already shopping for new systems, new people, new roles with sexier titles that included innovation or global strategy or synergy pipeline or whatever else consultants are huffing these days. But I knew one thing she didn't. When you tear out the foundation to repaint the walls, the whole house starts to shake. And she had just picked up the sledgehammer. 3 days after Sierra's grand entrance, she called a stand-up meeting. Not in a conference room, not via Zoom. No, this was in the middle of the damn break room, next to the perpetually jammed vending machine and the mini fridge that smelled like expired coleslaw and somebody's failed vegan phase. She stood on a chair, a literal chair, like she was about to recite slam poetry or lead a revolution. We're going to reinvigorate this space, she said, arms spread wide like a preacher or an air traffic controller. We're going to take this company to the next level of visibility and leadership authenticity. Someone clapped. It was her assistant. She launched into a list of changes that sounded like they were generated by shaking a corporate buzzword bingo cage. Disruption, lean-in mindset, thought elasticity. I swear I heard her say metrics of vibes. Then she looked directly at me, still on that goddamn chair, and said, we're going to re-examine legacy roles to make room for high-impact leadership. Everyone turned toward me like she just announced I had terminal obsolescence. I didn't flinch, just nodded, like a woman who once unclogged a copy machine during a power outage with a paperclip and a threat. The next day, she invited me into her office, which she'd already redecorated with a Himalayan salt lamp and a gold-foiled canvas that said Boss Babe Energy. She offered me a chair. I remained standing. Carol, she said, folding her hands like she was a Disney villain pretending to be a guidance counselor. I've been reviewing org charts. There's a bit of a discrepancy between your title and your impact. I blinked slowly. I manage escrow, legal coordination, and compliance for the merger. She smiled like she was speaking to a confused dog. Right, but what's the energy around that? I wanted to tell her the energy was don't get us sued. But I didn't. I kept it professional. I ensure compliance, I said, and serve as the authorized escrow signatory. She waved her hand like I just told her I collect stamps. Yes, but does anyone know that? Legal does, so does the Buyers Council. Also both banks, two regulators, and the CFO. She leaned back, a little irritated that I'd answered without hashtags. Carol, she said, tilting her head, don't you think it's time to give someone else the opportunity to grow in that space? Ah, there it was, wrapped in corporate kindness like a rotten banana in a gift bag. I smiled. That's the thing about women like me, we've trained our face muscles to hold in screams during quarterly audits. I'll prepare transition documentation, I said. She blinked. So you're agreeing? I'll do what's best for the company, which was true, but not in the way she hoped. I went back to my office, closed the door, opened my merger files. I read slowly, methodically, word for word, and that's when I found it again, because I already knew it was there. Paragraph 17, footnote 6, Appendix B. Primary escrow authorization shall remain with Carol Emerson unless reassignment is filed in accordance with Clause 8.3 of the Escrow Governance Agreement, subject to a 5-business-day certification period. Translation? Unless they went through a very specific process, I was still the woman with the keys. And guess what Sierra hadn't done? I didn't say a word, didn't email a soul. I just made a backup, printed a hard copy, sent a sealed envelope to my lawyer labeled, just in case. Then I went home and baked lemon bars so good they should be illegal. Because while she was searching for someone with more sparkle, I was making sure the foundation was mine to burn or bless. The merger was coming. Everyone felt the rush, but I had no rush. I had time. And Sierra? She had no idea what I still controlled. They rented out a ballroom for the quarterly meeting. You know, the kind, dim chandeliers, stale coffee, chairs that squeak like a guilty conscience. The catering trays were all lukewarm carbohydrates and limp lettuce, and the agenda promised transformative updates from leadership, which everyone knew was code for bloodletting with hors d'oeuvres. I wore my usual navy blazer, wedding band tan line, shoes buffed with the same paper towel I used to clean my glasses. I sat near the back, out of spotlight range, but close enough to see if anything on the projector required legal interpretation. The room buzzed. People laughed, shifted, scrolled on their phones. I flipped through the packet like it was a hymn book, and I already knew the chorus. Sierra took the stage with the energy of someone who practices smiling in front of a ring light. She opened with a monologue about transformation and vision, peppered with so much faux vulnerability I expected a text logo to drop from the ceiling. Then came the slideshow, org charts, arrows, headshots of people who'd never seen the inside of a server room. We are entering a bold new era, she declared, and that requires alignment, energy, visibility. The word visibility hit my spine like a molar crack. Then she said my name. Carol Emerson has been with Shoremount for over a decade, she began, and for a split second, I thought maybe she'd surprise me. That she'd say I was being promoted, acknowledged, that someone had finally noticed I was the reason the whole operation hadn't gone full fire festival. Instead, she smiled and her voice got soft in that HR murder kind of way. To support our growth, we're repositioning Carol into a new role, administrative support. The room froze. Not a full gasp, this wasn't a movie, but a collective tightening. Forks paused midair. Phone screens dimmed. Even the guy from accounting who always smelled like wet wipes stopped chewing. And she continued, oblivious or pretending to be, she'll be helping onboard our new director of strategic operations. That title used to be mine. New director? A man I'd only seen twice, once asking where to find the break room and once getting lost in the parking garage. That was who I'd be training. I stood slowly, smiled like I'd just been complimented on my handwriting at a firing squad. I nodded once, turned, and walked out of the ballroom. The echo of my heels on the floor was the only sound in the room. Down the hall, past the framed corporate milestones and the inspirational posters with words like excellence and integrity, I made my way back to my office. I closed the door, pulled out my drawer, opened the box I hadn't touched since 2016, one with the framed photo of my old dog, a mug that said world's quietest badass, and a thumb drive labeled escrow stuff. Do not delete, I packed slowly, deliberately. My hands shook a little, not rage, not grief. Just adrenaline looking for somewhere to go, like my body knew I was walking a tightrope and below was not failure but something worse, irrelevance. The final thing I took was my plant, a pothos, low maintenance, impossible to kill. A plant like me. As I left, HR was too busy eating bagels to notice. I didn't slam the door, I didn't curse, I didn't cry. But in the elevator, I looked at myself in the mirrored walls and whispered one sentence. She just demoted the damn lockbox. Then I went home and opened wine, and Sierra, she thought I'd vanished, but I wasn't gone. I was repositioning too, just not the way she meant. They gave my office to the new guy before my chair had a chance to cool off. No joke. Got a ping from the receptionist that Friday afternoon. Hi Carol, just a heads up, facilities is reallocating your nameplate. Let us know if you left a mug in the dishwasher. I didn't respond. By Monday morning, I was officially a ghost. No keycard, no VPN access. My work email bounced back with a generic "this user no longer exists." Poof. 11 years, deleted like I was some half-finished PowerPoint. I watched it all happen from my kitchen table. Coffee in hand, slippers on. It was raining. Soft, Midwestern rain, not dramatic, just enough to blur the edges of things. I sat there and thought, so this is what it looks like when they think you're done. HR never called. No one from legal followed up. IT disabled my access, then posted a selfie on Slack from the ping pong table like they'd just solved cybercrime. And Sierra? She practically floated down the halls. Word got back to me through the grapevine. My old lunch buddy in accounting, bless her, Sierra had called my departure a quiet evolution. Said it was time to inject new energy into legacy roles. Her assistant, a walking job title with legs, told people over kombucha that no one is irreplaceable. That was her favorite phrase. Like she read it on a mug at TJ Maxx and thought it was spiritual. But here's the thing about being invisible for over a decade. You learn how to vanish without leaving fingerprints, but with just enough heat for the smoke to matter later. I didn't scream. I didn't sue. I didn't even update my LinkedIn. I waited. I printed a copy of the escrow agreement, bound it, put it in a fireproof box next to my passport and the deed to my house, made another copy, sent it to my attorney, along with a brief note that read, retain in event of premature replacement. Clause 8.3. Meanwhile, I did what Sierra assumed I couldn't. I adapted. I reread every clause I'd written, every protocol I'd signed, every place my initials still lived inside that merger. Because here's what nobody realized. The merger wasn't a flip-the-switch deal. It was slow, deliberate, and tied together by legal knots only I knew how to untie. Buried inside that pretty packet of jargon was a binding clause, one that made me the primary escrow signatory. A role that couldn't be reassigned without filing, approval, and a 5-day certification window. A role that Sierra never even looked at because it didn't sparkle on a spreadsheet. Let them pop champagne. Let them plan their photo ops and press releases. I baked banana bread, shredded old tax returns, took walks without checking my phone. Because silence wasn't surrender, it was setup. They mistook my stillness for defeat. But still water holds the deepest currents. And this deal? It was about to drown someone. On the third morning after my vanishing act, I lit a candle that smelled like citrus and vengeance and opened my personal inbox. Buried beneath newsletters, coupon codes, and a forwarded recipe for tuna casserole from my sister, there it was, an unread email from 3 weeks prior, still flagged. Subject, final merger escrow form countersigned copy attached from legal@shoremountsystems.com. I opened it. Attached was the entire escrow protocol, 42 pages of fine print, compliance tables, timeline benchmarks, and signature fields. Near the end, in section 7.2, my initials, in blue ink, crisp and proper. That field was titled Primary Signatory Seller Entity. Beneath it, Carol Emerson. No strike-throughs, no substitutions, no time-stamped amendment. Nothing. The reassignment field? Blank. Clause 8.3, which I'd written myself in a caffeine-fueled haze during a pre-pandemic audit, clearly stated, reassignment of escrow signatory requires formal notification, updated legal identification, and 5 business days of verification prior to activation. Nobody had filed it. Nobody knew to file it, because I was the only one who ever handled that kind of paperwork. Sierra and her new lapdog director hadn't even looked. They thought control was a matter of job titles and LinkedIn banners. But in escrow, it's in the ink, it's in the filing, it's in the damn chain of custody. I clicked forward. To Alan at South Gravellegal.com subject. Keep the safe body if they call. I've never heard of escrow. But here's everything. Attachment, escrow final PDF send. Then I deleted it from my sent folder. Then from my trash. Then I cleared my cookies, poured a second cup of coffee, and sat down to write a grocery list like I wasn't the ticking time bomb buried in Shoremount's basement. By that afternoon, I heard from a friend in facilities, Sierra had installed an aromatherapy diffuser in my old office. Lavender, apparently. She'd also hung a framed quote that said, "Done is better than perfect." Fitting, considering she'd done me dirty and thought it was perfect. I wondered if she even realized how mergers settle, how banks hold funds in escrow, which stay frozen until the signatory releases them. No signature, no funds, no deal. And right now, the only person who could unlock that account was busy alphabetizing her spice rack and watching reruns of Columbo. That night, I logged into my backup email, one they didn't know about. No work files, no links, just one tool, access to the timestamp logs of every document I'd approved. I checked the audit trail. Last activity, Carol Emerson's signatory authentication 14 days ago. Next required activity, signatory transfer pending. Pending, that word hung in the air like a guillotine waiting for gravity. The tension wasn't in what I would do. It was in what I wouldn't. I wouldn't answer calls. I wouldn't clarify roles. I wouldn't remind them of what they should have triple-checked before embarrassing the woman who built their compliance framework while half the exec team was still figuring out Slack. They'd forgotten one crucial rule. When a system works so flawlessly, you don't even think about it. That's not luck. That's someone quietly keeping the gears oiled behind the curtain. And I was the one with the oil can. But now I was watching and waiting. There was nothing they could do but stumble toward the cliff. Blind, confident, and already 2 steps too far. The party was invite only, of course. Sierra didn't want legacy baggage energy clogging up her pre-merger photo ops, which meant no finance analysts, no compliance officers, and absolutely no women over 45 who could recite the IRS retention schedule by heart. It was held on the rooftop of a downtown hotel, complete with uplighting, finger foods that looked like dental samples, and a DJ playing ambient house music like this was Ibiza instead of Cleveland. The champagne flutes were rimmed with edible gold dust. Sierra toasted with a laugh so shrill it could sterilize frogs. "Tomorrow we print money," she shrieked. Everyone cheered like she just invented capitalism. Someone passed around a novelty check for $138 million with both company logos stamped in glossy ink. Sierra posed with it, her arm around the new director of strategic operations, my former title, who smiled like he wasn't terrified of spreadsheets. She called him a fresh start in leadership and winked. I saw the video on her assistant's Instagram. It was captioned, "Blessed and aligned Dizzy #merger life #women who win." Meanwhile, back at my house, I was cutting the crusts off a turkey sandwich while reruns of Murder, She Wrote played faintly in the background. The dog snored under the table. My phone lit up, a private message from a former teammate. "You were right, they're pushing it through tomorrow. No backup plan, you okay?" I didn't reply, not because I wasn't okay, but because I was finally perfect. That night, the buyer's legal team sent out the final email chain. Subject, confirmation of escrow readiness. I had access to the blind copy, don't ask how. Let's just say 11 years in operations buys you a few ghosts in the machine. And there it was, my name still listed. Primary signatory seller entity, Carol Emerson, no asterisk, no replacement, no reassignment filed, not even a footnote. The thread bounced around for hours, lawyers replying all with increasingly smug confidence, confirming escrow wiring instructions. Noted, pending digital signature release at 9:00 a.m. A junior associate, young green, probably working from a kitchen counter, flagged the listing. Carol Emerson still appears as signatory. Is that updated? Silence. For 10 minutes, nobody replied. Then a partner answered, "Assume it will be handled by morning. Not worth holding up over internal title realignment." I laughed out loud. Title realignment. Like they thought you could reassign escrow authority like you reassign parking spots. Assume it will be handled. Assume. We're walking into a 7-figure deal with the same confidence of someone microwaving fish in the office kitchen. I poured myself a glass of Cabernet, slow and steady, and leaned back. My living room was silent except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional clink of my dog's collar when he dreamed about chasing raccoons. They had no idea. Not the buyer's legal team. Not Sierra. Not her gold-dusted cronies. No one had noticed the hole in the floor. And the best part, they'd built the podium right over it. Tomorrow was merger day, and I wasn't blocking it. I was just going to let gravity do its thing. At 8:47 a.m., Sierra was halfway through a victory selfie with the new director when her phone buzzed so hard it almost flew out of her hand. She glanced down, expecting confetti emojis and champagne gifts. Instead, her smile flickered. The text came from the buyer's CEO, one of those gray-haired, no-nonsense types who wore suits like armor and hated emojis. "Where's the primary escrow signatory?" Just that. One line. No good morning, no punctuation fluff, no lol. The color drained from Sierra's face like someone had yanked the saturation slider off her life. For a second, she didn't move. Then she whispered it, barely audible. "Carol?" Her voice cracked mid-syllable like it physically hurt to say my name. The conference room stilled. The VPs, previously buzzing like overwhelmed bees, froze mid-bite, their bagels suspended in air like a museum exhibit on hubris. One of them, the guy from risk management who'd spent all month practicing his "we did it" speech, actually dropped his pen. It rolled across the table and hit the floor with a sound that echoed louder than it should have. Then came the rustling. Papers shuffled. Binders snapped open. Tablets flicked on. The legal team lunged for the compliance packets like they were diving into a fire. Pages turned, breathing got weirdly loud, and someone muttered, "No, no, no." Sierra's assistant stood frozen in the doorway, mascara already smudging, clutching a half-empty La Croix like it could ward off lawsuits. Back at my house, I was curled up in my robe, sipping coffee with hazelnut creamer, watching the sky turn that soft pink-orange shade that only lasts a few minutes before the world remembers it's supposed to be noisy. My phone buzzed once, then again, then 13 more times in a row. I didn't look, didn't need to. I took a slow sip. The ceramic mug was warm in my hands. It said, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right." A gag gift from a former paralegal who now runs a bakery. "We still email about sourdough starters." Buzz, buzz, buzz. I set the mug down, walked to the window, watched a bird land on the railing like the universe was casually confirming I had all the time in the world. Somewhere downtown, Sierra was unraveling like cheap twine in a thunderstorm. The buyer's CEO had asked a very simple question. A question no one in that glass tower could answer without saying the thing they all hoped wasn't true. Carol never got replaced. Because no one filed the paperwork. No one activated the new signatory. No one even asked if I'd stepped down. They just assumed, like sheeple at a trust fall seminar. And now? Now the money was locked, fully, legally, contractually frozen, until one name appeared on a digital signature line. Mine. Inside the boardroom, one of the older directors finally broke the silence. He looked at Sierra like he was staring at a child who'd drawn on a Rembrandt with crayon. "You demoted the only person who could close this deal," he said. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Just breathe and regret. Buzz. My phone lit up again, new message. "This one from an unknown number, please call me, we can fix this." I picked up the phone, then set it face down on the table. I wasn't ignoring them. I was observing the silence they earned. And God, it was beautiful. The lawyers looked like they were aging in dog years. Half of them were red-faced, flipping through printed agreements and swearing under their breath. The other half just sat there, glassy-eyed, scrolling through old emails with the haunted look of people realizing they never actually understood the documents they claimed to review. By 9:02 a.m., the buyer's CFO had already left the room. Just stood up, unplugged his laptop, and walked out without a word. One of the junior counsel whispered, "Do we reschedule?" But no one answered. They found the section eventually. Section 8.3, Escrow Governance. The part that spelled it all out in black and white. In the absence of a formally executed and verified signatory reassignment, the listed primary shall remain in full legal control of escrow release, including authorization, transfer, and settlement signatures. Underneath that, primary escrow signatory Carol Emerson, verified yes, reassigned no. The line for the secondary, still blank, not empty, not pending, just never filled. There was no backup plan, no alternate authority. The wires were waiting. The funds were sitting in digital purgatory. All that was needed was one click, mine. Sierra had tried to laugh it off at first. "We'll just call Carol, it's not a big deal." Then she did. She called me, 3 times in a row. I let each ring out like the final act of a play she didn't know she was starring in. She left a voicemail, stiff, professional, fake sweet like someone trying to return a damaged blender without the receipt. Then she texted, "Hey Carol, just wondering if you're available to hop on a quick call signature logistics. Hope you're well." Smiling face with smiling eyes. I didn't answer. 15 minutes later, "Carol, please, it's important. We need to close today." Then, "I understand you're upset, but this affects everyone. You're putting people's jobs at risk. Then we can talk about reinstating your role. Then I'll call the board. I'll fix it. Just please respond." By 10:11 a.m., the desperation had bled into her punctuation. "Carol, answer your phone." I finally responded, not with a call, not with a paragraph, not with a threat or a negotiation or some dramatic monologue. Just one line. "Per policy, signatory reassignment requires 5 business days." I could practically hear the scream through the silence. She wrote back instantly, "We can override that. There has to be a way." I didn't reply because there wasn't a way. That was the whole point. That's why I wrote the clause that way, back when no one was watching and I was the only one who cared about keeping the walls upright while the boys played vision board. There are rules in escrow. Rules that don't bend for ego or flair or someone's LinkedIn post about leading through disruption. Escrow isn't about charisma, it's about control. Quiet, patient, meticulous control. The kind that no one notices until it's the only thing holding up the ceiling. Back in the boardroom, someone was audibly crying. A tech from the buyer's side was explaining to their CEO that the funds couldn't move. "It's not a system bug," he kept saying. "It's legal. It's the signature field. The system is coded not to release until Carol signs." Someone else finished. Sierra stared at her phone like it had betrayed her, as if her $1,000 device should have come with a button marked undo. She looked up. The board looked back. No one said a word, and I refilled my coffee, stirred in cream, sat on the porch. The sky was a perfect, cloudless blue. You could almost hear the sound of consequences settling into place. The official timestamp was 9:01 a.m., a time that should have marked the beginning of a new chapter, a post-press release champagne toast, a triumphant LinkedIn rollout with a hashtag like #ShoreMount ascends. Instead, it marked the death of a deal. The buyer's CEO ended the call without theatrics. Just a flat tone, all oxygen stripped from his words. "We're postponing indefinitely. There are material compliance irregularities. We'll revisit in Q3 maybe." Click. Silence. Not the kind where people are waiting to talk. The kind that stretches, thick and suffocating, when everyone in the room realizes the train has already gone off the cliff and they're still gripping their seatbelts. Someone gasped. Someone else dropped their stylus. A third tried to log into the deal dashboard again like the outcome would change if they refreshed the page hard enough. And Sierra stood frozen at the head of the table, that brittle smile glued to her face like she thought it could keep her job from slipping. Her mouth opened once, then again. No sound. Finally, one of the older board members, God bless his liver-spotted hands, leaned forward and said what everyone else didn't have the guts to: "You demoted the only person who could close this." No one corrected him. No one defended her, because there was no spin for what had just happened. They hadn't just lost a deal. They had publicly face-planted in front of a major buyer, triggered legal exposure, shattered shareholder confidence, and tanked 3 months of due diligence because someone wanted more visibility in leadership and thought compliance was a part-time hobby. Sierra finally spoke, voice barely audible. "We can recover," her voice cracked on recover. The new director, my replacement, looked like he wanted to slide under the table and become part of the carpet. They wouldn't recover. Not soon. Maybe not ever. Not without paying legal fees, rewriting escrow protocols, and, most humiliating of all, asking me to come back and fix it. And me? I was on my porch, still in my robe, still holding that same mug with the crack down the side that I refused to throw out. The sun was warming up and the breeze carried just a hint of fall. I had jazz playing in the background, something slow with a brush snare and a piano that knew how to take its time. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Sierra, or legal, or the board. It was my bank. Deposit received, $27,500 from Shoremount Retainer Trust Account escrow admin fee. That payment? I set it up 4 months ago. Part of the original escrow draft, automatic, irrevocable, and they didn't even know it was coming. I set my coffee down, leaned back, watched a neighbor's dog chase a squirrel with Olympic-level determination. Then, finally, I spoke, quiet, just to myself. You don't fire the vault before you've emptied it. Let them clean up the mess. Let them explain to stakeholders why the crown jewel acquisition collapsed because they mistook titles for authority and sparkle for structure. Let them realize, too late, that the woman they humiliated had built the entire damn fortress. Brick by brick, clause by clause. And when they pushed her out, they didn't just lose a director. They lost the key. I took another sip, still hot, still in control. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.